Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the show. This evening, my guest will be Rev.Charles Williams. He's the producer, host of Whispering Hope Ministries. How you doing there, Rev. Williams?
How you doing, Paul?
Thank you for coming on the show. Tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Paul, I really don't like to talk much about me. I think people have seen enough that I've been in this area for most of my years and in and out of town doing other things. But at any rate, talking about me gets kind of redundant for me, you know.
Yes, sir.
Plus, people see different things and they try to figure out what you're doing. Right now, in the role of Whispering Hope Ministries, I like to think of myself sometimes as an evangelist and sometimes as a street preacher. But we come on the shows and everything trying to talk to people and bring ideas from one area of the city to other areas of the city so that people can connect mentally. You do a great job of that, and I do want to commend you on that. The different people you have on your show, I've been elated how many different organizations and people, heads of organizations you brought on your show. And it lets people know who are sitting home watching that if they're interested in getting some help from these particular agencies or these particular people, that they do exist. Mm-hmm. Because it's very difficult sometimes to bring the two together.
Correct.
So I like to think that that's basically what I do in my ministry, really.
What excites you the most about your ministry? I mean, because you do an outstanding job within the community. What exactly that excels you in that area?
Well, in meeting people that I don't know and listening to what they're saying and what they're doing, sometimes I have the expertise to help them, but mostly knowing where to tell them to go. Because basically that's what I think Christianity is. It's not so much what I am, it's what I know about God and about his programs, what Jesus tells us and what the Holy Spirit directs us to do. I think in all of us is the seeds of greatness. But I think sometimes people never find nails. And so they get covered up with everything. They get covered up with doubt. They get covered up with confusion. And the biggest thing is not knowing. That is also the great feeling of disillusionment. If you knew where to go to get what you needed, then you would, to me, just go there. But sometimes people get beat up mentally and they get frustrated. Sometimes they keep trying to go through a door that's not there for them, when all they have to do is figure out inside of them what that door is, what is made for them. Everybody got different talents. And unfortunately, sometimes you're talking to people who don't see your talents. And so to them, you can't do anything. I would like to think of Michelangelo painting the Sistine Chapel. Most of the time, he was on a scaffold high above the floor. Nobody knew what he was doing.
Correct.
Half the time, I might not have been doing anything but sleep. But he ate up there, slept up there, and everything else. And so they had to trust that he was doing something. And look at the miracle that we have now because they trusted him.
When you go out into this community and you see the homelessness, you see the individuals that come to you, you see them out in the street on a regular basis, and they're crying for help, and they look at you, and you're trying to minister to them. Mm-hmm. How do you, there they go now.
There we
goes
go
God
again.
now. God,
right, forgive me, Paul, I forgot. Right,
and
cut this off.
And what you have is, there we go, ladies and gentlemen. That's God calling. We got to hold up a guy. God's calling Rev. Williams. He's on call 24 hours. You know, Rev. Williams, when you see the homelessness, how do you explain to them that, or encourage them that there's going to be a better day?
Paul, I think the better day to me sometimes comes at a different stance than other folk. A better day for one person is not a better day for another person. I see people who are poverty-stricken of mind in a mansion. Some people are in despair, and they live in the greatest surroundings in the world, but it's their mental climate that's the problem. Then I see other people who live in what somebody else might call squalor, but they are happy. So what makes a difference? It's your mental climate. If you're talking about being in the woods, well, my goodness, if you're a woodcutter, that's where you would be.
Correct.
If you are a person on the seashore and you're out there, if you are a sea person, you're not stranded. It's where your habitat is. So I think that's what I meant when I say some people are out of their element without knowing what that element is. All people shouldn't live in the city. The city is just not made for them. Other people should not live on the farm. It's just not made for them. So you always have to find that medium between what that person can be, what their aptitude is, what their talents are. And sometimes it is surrounding people who are around you who determine what you become, because sometimes you're walking with a crowd who's not going in your direction. And of course, you have to learn that. And this is what spirituality is about to the individual. He has to learn that he is an individual, and God is your father as well as anybody else. And you have to listen to the spirit and the voice talking inside of you. And if we can awaken that in people, then they can help themselves, if that's making any sense.
Makes a lot of sense. But you have the individuals, just like you say, they're out there in the streets, they're homeless, they're unemployed. And I'm reading the Bible. Why is God doing this to me? And why not to that next individual? Why is he riding around that nice car? Why can't I have that same thing he has? I'm reading the Bible like you're saying. Why shouldn't he?
Okay, Paul, you made a perfect example about what I meant about people's mental attitude. Why is it we've sold a person you can't be happy unless you have a car? Do you know most people in the world don't have a car? I was very surprised one time when I found out that most people in the world don't have a telephone. Yet we take those things for granted. And so we think that something's wrong with us when we don't have something. But didn't you come in this world with nothing?
Yes, sir.
What are you going to have when you leave?
Don't have nothing.
You'll have nothing. So everything you have is loaned to you between those times. Now, what are the real necessities?
You got food, clothing,
Last
and a
one?
roof. over your head.
Yes. Food, clothing, and shelter. Those are needs. Everything else is a what?
That's a want.
God says, I'll help the needy, not the greedy. So unfortunately, we have to separate a need from a want. And I find in our society today that we're confused with those two. And when we get those things confused, we sell our souls to something that we don't need sometimes. And sometimes we have to get rid of things that are troubling us before we can find ourselves and find the true person in you to be happy. Do you have to have 2 cars?
No, sir.
Do you have to have a bicycle?
No, sir.
Do you have to have a television?
I don't know now. Going to what's on.
Well, what I'm saying.
Yes, sir. No,
Okay,
sir. No, sir.
but
That's not a necessity.
the point is, we need those things if we're going to communicate on today's level.
Correct.
But the thing I'm saying to you is that we have to make the correct uses of the things that God has given us, and unfortunately, we don't. I see people, all they do is watch silly things on television. That's their prerogative, it's their television. You can do that all you want. But then I see other people who are going to school by television. I also see people go to religious programming on television. They get inspiration from that. So television is a great medium. And it's a great informational tool. But remember, it can be a tool or it can be a hindrance. It's your choice. Does that make sense?
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Let's not just talk about television. How about like the internet? Because a lot of companies are going to the internet as far as filling out an application. But I'm not used to working on the internet.
Okay.
Why are the companies going away from that and making me change?
Okay. Well, change is necessary for everybody. There's always been some sort of change. In fact, the earth itself gives you a flood in an area sometimes where you had fertile land. The people had to move. move off the flooded area into another area, then sometimes they came back. You might say we're always journeys or nomads on this particular land until civilization started figuring ways around channeling things. So we look at a civilization as something stable. But over time, cities have risen, fallen, and everything else. And we all like to always talk about Rome falling. Rome's not the only city that fell. I mean, you look around the world, we look at all kinds of cities and histories that were great cities at the time, and the cities fell. So we need to stop thinking of everything as stagnant. That if it's not here like this right now, something's wrong. No, change is going to come of some kind, including an earthquake. And today we have to worry about tornadoes and things in places where we didn't have them before. So if you get that out of your mind that I'm going to be like this to be happy all the time, you're going to be very unhappy because jobs change, areas change, the areas of responsibility change. The internet you asked me about. The internet is no more than a tool. Now if you want to go to 100 places and blanket 100 companies by shoe leather, I'm sure you can do that if you want to drop those things in the slots or knock on enough doors till somebody sees you. But the internet is simply a more expedient way of doing it. You still have both options, but the internet for people to learn to use it, to meet people in other areas, to even go across the country. Like sometimes people email me from Africa, from India. I'm emailing and talking to people in email I've never met. So what I'm saying is it's becoming a global community, and it's good in a way. Because if I got friends and other lands and everything, and they know me as a person, they're less hostile toward me. I'm less hostile toward people I know because I'm not afraid of them. Make sense?
Oh, yes, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, sir. How do we deal with the issues that we're facing in our community today?
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's a lot of things as far as the crime.
Mm-hmm.
Are we getting as involved in our community as we once were back years ago?
No, we're not, but then again, we look at that as a fault when it is a change we've got to get ahead of. We sit and watch change sometimes instead of getting involved in change. And so the change gets ahead of us. Then we want to play catch up on its ramifications. I know this sounds crazy, but let's back up a minute. When we moved from a rural area to a city area, we moved in with people who are from all sorts of places, and we forgot to do our block parties and knock on doors and greet the neighbors and that kind of thing. We let all that go. Everybody came in busy doing their own busy thing. So now we got a neighbor next door that we don't know, a neighbor down the street we don't know. We scared of everybody. Now we can't separate the crook from the average person because we don't know anybody. And so we look at everybody suspiciously, okay? And especially if you're of another race. We want to say, well, this guy looks like a Muslim. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. But we're a little apprehensive about talking to him. Then we took it a big guy. A big guy is more dangerous than little guys? In our world, the answer is no.
Correct.
But we seem to, feed off of that because that's what we're used to. And now we have to learn sometimes the person who's our race and everything is more dangerous to us than the other race. Hey, you can't look at anybody and tell who's going to do what. And so we have to learn people the way we did in our communities before. Come together in your community. So we used to tell the block parties, I used to say, get to know all the neighbors. Who belongs in that house over there? So if I see a strange person going in a house and I know everybody's supposed to be in there, I want to know who that is. I may decide to call the police and check him out. But not if I don't know whether he belongs there or not. When I see him taking the TVs out the house. He may be just moving.
Correct.
Okay, so this is what I mean when I say we have to be proactive in doing things rather than reactive.
When we go back and we see, I know you talked about the block parties. Whatever happened to the block parties? I mean,
Us?